By September 480 BCE, Athens is burning. The city has been abandoned, its temples are destroyed, and the remaining Greek forces are cornered. Across the water, they are facing a fleet of over 1,000 Persian warships. The Greeks have 370. It is a disparity of scale so large that, on paper, the war is already over. This satellite view shows the Isthmus of Corinth, the narrow land bridge where the Peloponnesian commanders wanted to retreat. Their plan was to abandon the sea, build a wall across this gap, and leave the rest of Greece to its fate. Themistocles, the Athenian leader, stopped the retreat with a threat. If the alliance fled to the isthmus, he would take Athens' 180 ships, nearly half the total fleet, and sail for Italy. Without those ships, the wall at Corinth would be useless. The Greeks were cornered, outnumbered, and their alliance was on the verge of collapsing before the first ram even hit a hull. A conventional battle in open water was certain death. The Persian fleet relied on Phoenician squadrons, the most skilled sailors in the world, who used speed and wide open space to dismantle their enemies. This diagram shows the danger of open sea combat. A numerically superior force uses wide expanses to execute flanking maneuvers, arcing around the smaller fleet to strike simultaneously. Once encircled, the smaller force loses all ability to maneuver. Here, 370 ships simply cannot survive 1,000. To survive, the Greeks had to move the battle to an environment where speed and superior seamanship were no longer weapons. Themistocles chose the Strait of Salamis. It is a narrow channel, barely a mile wide, enclosed by land on both sides. In this space, the sheer number of Persian ships wouldn't be an advantage, it would be a liability. But there was no reason for the Persians to enter the strait. Xerxes had already won the land war. He could have simply bypassed the fleet or waited for the Greek alliance to starve. Themistocles forced the issue through a lie. He sent a trusted slave to the Persian camp at night with a message. The Greeks were terrified and planning to flee. If Xerxes attacked now, he could catch them in the middle of a disorganized retreat and end the war in a single night. Queen Artemisia warned Xerxes that the Greeks were setting a trap and advised him to march his army south instead. But the king, convinced by the messenger's report, ignored her. He ordered his entire fleet into the narrow strait under the cover of darkness. The trap relied on one thing: Xerxes' belief that the Greeks were already beaten. The Persian sailors spent the entire night at the oars, rowing in tight formation, expecting to catch a fleeing enemy. By dawn, they were exhausted, cramped, and packed into a channel far tighter than their commanders had anticipated. When the sun rose, they didn't find a retreating fleet. They found 370 Greek triremes in full battle formation. These ships were built for one purpose: to use this heavy, bronze-tipped ram to shatter enemy hulls. A single Greek ship lunged forward, slamming its prow into a Persian vessel. It was the signal for the entire Greek line to charge. This ancient pottery illustrates the shift in tactics. In the narrow strait, the battle became a brutal, close-quarters infantry fight on the water. Heavily armored Greek hoplites boarded the lighter Persian ships, where their superior armor and long spears left the Persian crews with no effective defense. The Greeks had successfully stripped away every advantage the Persian navy possessed. As the Persian front lines stalled against the Greeks, a catastrophic chain reaction began. The massive rear ranks, unaware of the chaos ahead, continued to push forward into the channel, forcing their own ships into the wreckages. This model illustrates the spatial failure within the strait. When you squeeze 1,000 ships into a 1-mile choke point, they lose the ability to deploy or even receive orders. The fleet stops acting as a coordinated force and becomes a massive, drifting target. In the panic, Persian ships began crushing friendly hulls and snapping the oars of their own allies. Ships that tried to turn around were rammed by the vessels behind them. The fleet was literally destroying itself. Queen Artemisia's survival was the ultimate example of this chaos. To escape an Athenian pursuer, she deliberately rammed and sank a friendly Persian ship that was blocking her path. The Athenian captain, seeing her sink a Persian vessel, assumed she had defected and let her go. The immense size of the Persian fleet, the very thing that was supposed to guarantee victory, was the physical mechanism of its own destruction. By sunset, the Persian Empire had lost over 200 ships and thousands of men. Greek losses were minimal. The largest navy the world had ever seen was shattered in a single afternoon. Without his fleet, Xerxes' entire invasion plan collapsed. He could no longer protect his supply lines or move his troops around the Greek defensive walls. Fearing the Greeks would sail north and destroy the bridges he used to cross into Europe, Xerxes took the bulk of his army and retreated back to Asia, leaving only a fraction of his forces behind. By neutralizing the Persian navy, the Greeks had effectively paralyzed the momentum of a world-conquering empire. Salamis was a massive victory, but Greece was still occupied. The war was far from over. This relief shows the Persian infantry that remained. Xerxes left his general, Mardonius, with 300,000 elite soldiers. They spent the winter in Boeotia, waiting for spring to finish what the fleet could not. To win the war, the Greeks would have to do something they had avoided for years: leave the safety of the mountains and the straits to face the undefeated Persian army on the open plains of Plataea. Salamis proved that a massive fleet could be dismantled by geography. But the final decision would be made on land, where the Greek alliance would have to face the full weight of the Persian army head-on.